is Elijah Joseph. I'm an international student and I'm currently in third year doing financial economics.
And I'm Jess, my pronouns are she and her, and I'm a fourth year doing an honors specialization in sociology and a minor in women's studies. And I'm a domestic student.
Hey, my name is Sunday. I am in third year. I'm taking social justice and peace studies. I am not an international student.
Hello, my name is Isabella. I am a SASA major, also in the arts and humanities. I don't have a second major yet. I'm an international student, but I've been living in Canada for a while now. I'm originally from Nigeria.
I have stereotyped the other side.
No, I'd have to disagree. I don't think I've stereotyped domestic students from Canada.
I agree. I think I have. Just because I think I see them a lot as my parents. My parents are immigrants from Nigeria. So I don't know, I just kind of see them as slightly more conservative or just maybe just more in touch with their culture because I'm slightly disconnected from it. So yeah, but not a bad stereotype. Just kind of I kind of see them as similar to how an immigrant from Africa would be, or an immigrant from Jamaica or anything.
I would be lying if I said I haven't. I feel like that's and not even just because of my own accord and me wanting to do that. I feel like that's just been something that's become an automatic mental note for myself and for many people. Even though I try my best to recognize what I'm doing and realize that it's literally just a stereotype. But with myself, I'm self-aware enough to know hey, you're stereotyping that person, Sunday. You're probably not even like that. So yeah.
I think because of the fact that a majority of them fit that stereotype, so it's kind of easy to conceptualize and block them into this box. But like Sunday said, I think it's kind of I'm kind of aware that I am stereotyping the person. It kind of makes me aware that this person might not be all the way in this stereotype.
I find myself conforming to stereotypes and portrayals of my community.
Not really. When I tell people that I'm an international student from the Caribbean, no one really says, oh yes, I knew that or anything, unless I would tell them. So in my case, I don't think so.
Growing up in a white neighborhood, I think I try to avoid stereotypes of the Black community really, really hard. And as I've accepted my Blackness, I'm more comfortable being associated with the stereotypes. Now it's I guess I'm conforming just because I'm more okay with being myself and I don't try and distance myself from my Blackness, if that makes sense.
My community, well, for Nigerians, let's start from there, we're usually typecasted as very loud, which most of us are, but I'm not. And I feel in that sense, I'm a lot quieter and a lot more, mild than a lot of Nigerians that you would meet.
Mm-hmm. There are obviously things about myself that I recognize and I'm hey, that could fit into a generalized stereotype of what people may see of me when they automatically see me, or just make an assumption of who I am, but I don't fit fully into whatever stereotype it may be. But I can definitely recognize parts of my personality where they could be seen as a stereotypical, yeah.
I believe Western has done a good job addressing racism on campus.
They've done a really well job at making everyone feel home in their community, in the university. And so I've never really experienced any discomfort because they know how to address and help everyone depending on how they feel or where they're from.
I said they are sending out emails, they're putting out their little statements, and it's okay, that's nice and I appreciate them doing that, but where's the actual structural change? Profs are saying microaggressions in class, why are they not being disciplined? Why are they kind of just if it's being discussed and we're just told don't worry, they're gonna do sensitivity training, but there's no support for the students that had to listen to those microaggressions or be put in comfortable places, or orientation that is a very whitewashed community. Why are we not making changes to make that more diverse? Or why are we doing campaigns to get more Black students or more BIPOC involved in student leadership just for those students to apply and not get the positions? So I think Western's super performative and they saying all the right things, but they're too scared to actually follow through and make the actions to make it more inclusive.
I actually agree with some of the things you said a little while ago, because that is true. Even with O Week and all these different activities, they're more white, or they don't have any Black culture or any other race type culture in them. But then with microaggression from professors, I've never really experienced that.
I know, even me and Fairshire back when Res was open, they always had like theme days where like, oh, today's like Greek food day, or this is like this day. And like they avoided any type of Black culture, any type of Black food, and they were always super uncomfortable with it. And I'm like, okay, if we're trying to show diversity by having different food days, like why can't we like attempt a Nigerian meal or attempt a like Jamaican meal or attempt anything related to Black culture, you know? So I think it's just like very performative, and like in terms of like training anyone to do anything that makes Black students feel more included, Western just like does not care to, in my opinion.
I don't even need to talk about it more than just give an example of it. And I'm sure you know the example I'm going to give. Last year, right before COVID, the professor and student altercation that happened with the use of the N-word, and how Western went about that in that entire situation. And looking at it for what it was, you can already see some disparities in how Western could have handled that better.
I think this is common for most Black people, where you search like, how's the racism there? Like, is it normal racism, or can I take this racism? Is it like to the extreme? And the example that Sunday gave was the first thing that I kind of saw. I think because Western was just a little bit less than the other schools I had been accepted to, I chose Western. But with the situation of the professor, yeah, they didn't handle that as well as they could have.
I believe cultural appropriation is acceptable.
I could see someone of a different race wearing braids or something like that, and they could say, oh, but I appreciate your culture, this is why I'm doing this. But then it's like, no, because you don't know the hardships we've gone through with just our hair alone, and what we've had to do throughout these past couple of decades, hundreds of years, with just hair alone. There are more things than just, oh, I just appreciate your culture. Some people, yes, they do appreciate it, but some people, they appropriate it because it's the new trend or something like that. For here in particular, because I want to get into more about it a little bit more, a lot of people don't even know, like, say they used to braid maps into their hair. Some people don't even know that. So it's like, yes, I can understand you're saying, oh, yes, I want to appreciate the culture because it looks nice, you know, whatever. But at the same time, it's like, if you're only doing it for a trend, and let's say the trend is finished today and something else starts tomorrow, you're just going to leave it behind, then that's just very rude to me.
Yeah, Lad just said it completely well. There's such a big difference between culture appropriation and culture appreciation. I think people can see it very, very clearly. Like for me, culture appreciation is like, you know, if me and my family are having like some sort of celebration, and my friend who's, you know, non-Black comes and also wears Native attire to show respect to my family, my relatives, and they actually have done research into that attire, like that's culture appreciation to me. But if someone, you know, puts braids in their hair when they aren't Black, don't really care about the culture, like only putting it on because it's trendy, and they're giving credit to, like, let's say the Kardashians for the hairstyle, I think that's culture appropriation. I think it's disrespectful because it's like not acknowledging what Black people had to do, or, you know, just to be able to be acceptable in those hairstyles, because now these hairstyles are popular, but people a few years ago in Canada, like probably still hopping around the world, like they can get fired for wearing braids in their hair. They're not allowed to. So it's like, this isn't just a trend, it's our culture, and it's like disrespectful to try and make it something that it's not.
In terms of cultural appropriation, the way I understand cultural appropriation is that you take from a culture without giving appreciation to that culture, without giving credit to that culture. You take it and make it as if it's your own. And I feel like that can never be acceptable, because the consequences for the cultures that are being taken from are way more harmful and dire than the people who do take from cultures. I think our generation kind of like goes to an extreme in terms that people can't even appreciate other people's cultures anymore. But we definitely know that there are certain groups of people who will appropriate and continue to appropriate culture, and we kind of have to keep fighting against that.
I feel like there's a very fine line between appreciating someone's culture and being unaware of the struggle that comes behind it. To what I think is the really gross form of appropriation is when, you know, you see people who darken their skin color just to blackfishing, you know, just to seem cooler or get the aesthetic or just stuff like that because it seems like a popular trend. When realistically, you're not privy to the struggles that come with being from a darker skin color, you know?
You can take it off, but we can't.
Exactly, you know? And it's you're appreciating our culture for the benefits of it, not the drawbacks of it. That's why I feel like it goes, cultural appropriation gets kind of crazy, disrespectful, because, you know, you can't just take all the good and ignore the bad. When me, myself, I have to take all the bad, regardless if I want to or not. Yeah.
I do see that with when certain Black women will put chopsticks in their hair, or clothing lines will make specifically the Vietnamese cultural attire and make it into a short dress, or box braids, or cornrows will be termed Kardashian braids, or Bad Babies bringing this new Vogue hairstyle, and it's like, Africans, African Americans, Afro Canadians, we've been doing this way before Black was even cool. Like, we've had our hair like this forever. So
yeah, and it's almost as if when someone outside of the culture does it, that's when it's seen like, okay, that's kind of cool. But like,
that's when it's normalized.
When that's like our identity, it's seen like unprofessional, like bad, like all these things, when we're just accepting our culture for what it is. Like I there's a very, very weird discourse that comes with it. It's two different sides of the same coin, essentially. And if you're on the wrong side, then you're not going to get any of the benefits of it.
I believe my racial and cultural identity influences my experience on campus.
Again, I've never experienced anything personal to say, oh yes, this has caused me any trouble or anything. I'm an introverted person. I normally keep to myself. So if I'm not going to be out there to like experience these things, then I just have to disagree, because I'm not going to lie and say, oh yes, you know, just because, you know, some other people have, and hopefully I don't experience anything like that. I normally keep close with more Caribbean friends. So like if I'm always hanging around with them, I'm not going to be experiencing subliminal things from other people of different races or anything, because I just like hang around with my own group of friends all the time, or hang by myself. So I'm not really experiencing these sad things.
I think since the moment I stepped on this campus, it's impacting me, like whether people are making comments with my hair and res. And okay, personal antidote that's actually really messed up, but I think it's relevant here. When I was in second year, I res soft, and softing, like during our soft training, they really don't talk about race that much. Like I literally had to force them last year to start addressing it. But this was obviously like back in second year. So like I was like obviously a new soft, like didn't really want to like stir the boat or anything. I remember my frosh from a different floor, like they were like, I guess like making like this video game with those little Wii characters where they can like, you know, customize them. And my soft name at the time was Flicker. And so they sent me a stamp. They're like, yeah, they named it after you. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cute. They named it after me, this and that. Just for the sophomore report to come to me later and was like, yeah, so they tried to name it the N-word and then they couldn't. And so they were like, what's the next best thing? Flicker? So that was messed up. And the other soft didn't see the issue. She was like, yeah, like it's definitely not okay they did that, but like let's not make it a big deal. But if this was like sexism or homophobia or anything like that, I can tell you people would have been in an uproar. But for some reason, for when it comes to race, people just don't care. And like even, you know, obviously that's like on the extreme end of negative, and like in less of a negative way, like I feel like I've become like a teacher to people about race, where like no matter if I'm like on council or if I'm in softing or something, I become like, I don't know, like the Black resource. Whenever they have questions they ask me, which like obviously like I have lived experience, so like, you know, you can ask me, but it's also like you guys can easily do the research. Like I can't speak to any Black experience besides my own, but they kind of treat it as like, oh, Jess, like our token Black, let's ask her all these questions regardless to help us out when like we have to write statements or stuff. So I think like my race has definitely really impacted me in the sense that like obviously like microaggressions, racism, but also being expected to be like the spokesperson for Black people on campus, which doesn't make sense to me.
That is really messed up what you just said, what they did to you. Personally, I would have backfired and really cussed them out. But also, you said that they always come to you for like to learn, well, not to learn, but to ask you questions about your race for like, I'm guessing assignments or whatever. That in itself could be taken negatively and positively, because yes, they may only be using you just for a good grade or whatever. But at the same time, you're still getting the word out of a particular topic about Black people or anything. So even if they're saying, oh, this is only for grade, it's still gonna be stuck in the back of their mind. Maybe sometime in the future, they might say, you know what, let me think about this again. And, you know, maybe I was rude back then and I should approach someone differently or of a different race differently in the future. Or the things that I've learned about this, you know, I can understand now where I was going wrong. So I think there is a negative and a positive side to that, of teaching other people about your race. And personally, I like to ask people things about their race so I can understand everyone better. So it's not completely negative, or yes, I just have to continue teaching them over and over something new. That's just my take on that.
You know, I see where you're coming from. And like, I agree in some certain circumstances if they're just like asking like, you know, questions, but I think there's an issue on this campus where, you know, Black students are expected to be educators, but they're not compensated. And like, this might sound ridiculous at first, but it's like, you know, when I'm having to answer multiple questions about my Blackness, you know, when I have to like read over statements about like Black trauma or like the Black Lives Matter protests, or if I'm being asked just to speak about this all the time, like that's pulling on a lot of my trauma and a lot of my experiences. And it's like, you know, you would never expect a professor to teach something without compensation. And like, Western's a really big issue with like not paying student leaders in general, but especially not paying BIPOC students, when especially like in the last year, the amount of statements, the amount of videos, like BSA has been being put in overtime with the amount of work they've been doing. And are they being paid for that? No. And it's like, why are Black students expected to do all this labor for free?
Because I'm first year, right? And I haven't quite experienced any direct form of racism. You know, there have been a few things that have been a bit, I don't know if this is racist, but in terms of direct racism and like how I socialize, how I talk to people, I think I'm trying my best just to be me. Like, I just want to present myself as Isabella rather than Isabella, the Black woman. Like, I do not want my race to be the determining factor of how a person sees me. When I socialize with people, I try to socialize with as many people across the board as I can and like get that full experience. I kind of just think I'm just going through my life on campus as Isabella.
I'd have to fall on the other side of that spectrum. I've been 3 years at Western, and I've seen the large amounts of like subtle, I call it like subtle racism or subtle ignorance is what I like to call it. And in a way where who I am, like me as a Black man, has directed some of the shifts on how people would act towards me, how people would talk to me. Say if I go to a party and be like, hey, whatever, and then like there'd just be a little shift in how that person talks to me. And I see that, you know, my skin color really does attribute to the identity that is recognized by other people. And some of the times, many people don't realize they're doing it. So in and around campus, I've noticed multiple times that skin color becomes before who you are. Even before you even open your mouth, your skin color speaks for you. That's what I've noticed personally in my sense.
I often find myself code switching around people who don't look like me.
If I'm talking to somebody who's Caribbean or talking to someone outside of my race, the same one person you're going to get, Elijah Joseph, that's it. I'm not going to switch it up for you just because. The only thing is, in the Caribbean, we have dialects. So if I'm with my friends, of course, I'm going to speak dialect. If I'm with someone else, they won't understand that. So I'd have to speak standard English. But other than that, I'm going to be the same way that I am with my Caribbean friends, with other races. I'm not going to be one person here, one person there, or talk in a different accent, like an American accent or anything, just to conform to the people of other races that I want to be friends with. No, if they don't understand me being disrespectful towards me when it comes to that, then I just find other friends. It's simple.
I think it's just because of, you know, the areas I am involved in on this campus in terms of being like, you know, on councils where I am the only Black person, or being in orientation where there's not a lot of Black people, or, you know, having to talk to men, which is not Black at all. And like, you know, I feel like I can't, like if we're discussing these issues, for example, like I can't be as blunt. I have to really sugarcoat it. I really have to like make it seem like, oh, no, it's okay. They didn't understand that this was racist before. Like, let me like walk you through it. And then like talk about the change I want to see. Cause like, I know that if I come to like blunt, they're going to be like, oh, she's being so aggressive right now. Like, let's not listen to her. Well, I know if I was talking to like my Black friends or my Black peers, like I could be as blunt as I wanted to and they would get it. They understand where I'm coming from. But I think in these circles where there's not a lot of Black people, they get very uncomfortable and they shut down really quick. So like I've had to code switch in order, you know, to get the changes on this campus that I want done.
Code switching is such an awesome term to highlight the multiple identities that a Black person can just switch like this, depending on who you're surrounded upon. Because you got to realize that whatever situation you're given in, that you're placed in, there's already a predominant narrative on you we're inclined to switch different parts of our personality to shift that dominant narrative that people will have. So code switching has just become everyday like knowledge in everyday action, because there are so many different groups at Western, so many different groups, you know, and you never know what situation you're going to be placed in, and you don't want to be given the negative viewpoint of that situation. So your only option is to remove those parts of yourself to make sure that someone doesn't see you that way. And it's exhausting. It is. Yeah.
I think it's quite dynamic for me because, like I said, I'm an international student, and it's kind of, I find myself code switching within the Black community in terms that I don't speak like this when I'm with my African friends, when I'm with my Nigerian friends. I don't speak like this when I'm with my family. But when I talk to people who did grow up in the Western world, I kind of switch my accent and like make them more comfortable due to experiences I had when I first came to Canada. When people were like, "Oh, we can't understand you, can't understand you." I knew it was like, I knew they could understand me, but like that was just their way of like, you know, subtle racism. And I find myself also switching between like how I talk to African Canadians versus how I talk to white Canadians, and how I talk to African Canadians versus how I talk to Africans. Like it's a whole different dynamic. And in terms of it being exhausting, sometimes you kind of just want to be yourself all the way through. Mm-hmm. But I try to think of it as being adaptable, and all those parts of me are me, you know. It's not a mask I'm putting on. It's just a different way or a different side of me.